Now this rustproofing video should have been completed a long time ago, but things have taken an unexpected turn. I thought that all I was going to be doing would be to review standard rustproofing products like these. Don't worry, I will get there, but I have much more important things to attend to first. Now with my two Land Rovers, I've always taken the attitude I've only got time to look after one of them myself, that is the Defender. And for the other, the Disco, I've always put the work outside. On the mechanical side, no problem at all, absolutely great. On the bodywork, well, the vehicle has been rust-proofed on 2 occasions by a high-priced specialist rust-proofing firm, apparently everything fine. And also, I had the inner and outer seals replaced by a recognised Land Rover expert. I asked him to do a good poke around on the chassis, and he said he had, and everything was in order. But that's not what I found. Now the Disco was due another rust-proofing, the 3rd one. I thought I'd do it myself and also make it subject to this video. Now the first thing I found was that the rear floor was rotten and I had to replace it. And that's a fairly standard job in a Disco. But also when I came to prepare the chassis, I gave it bloody good hammering with the air tools to get off the old underseal, and I found there were a number of soft spots and I knocked a few holes in it. I'm afraid to say it now needs welding. The whole job is very much bigger than originally envisaged. Now the way I was brought up, I was always told to be responsible for myself and for my life. Now that doesn't mean you can do everything yourself, and obviously where possible you pay others to do things for you. But if items are really critical, there's no substitute. You've got to be prepared to do it yourself and ensure that it's done right. Now it's quite clear I've got quite a large scale rust treatment problem to deal with before I can even think about applying any surface coatings. Now this is a subject which has been addressed by others, including for example Geoffrey Croker in New Zealand, and whilst I don't wish to repeat their work, I do want to conduct a small scale trial myself so I understand a bit better what the outcome is going to be. However, I would point out I think that all of the others have only looked at the case of external rust, whereas my main problem is rust starting inside enclosed spaces and working its way out. For those of you who aren't familiar with this subject, there are basically 2 classes of products you can buy. Firstly, the rust converters and then the rust removers. The rust converters aim to convert the surface rust into a hard, stable compound, and they're often combined with some sort of primer so you can paint directly over them. One such example is this FE123 from a firm called Rustbuster in the UK, and the active ingredient is tannic acid. Now the rust removers are often sold by, for example, car accessory places, usually sold in small quantities and at quite high prices. This is one such example, and also Genelite comes to mind. But these are quite useless for my purpose. I want something you can buy in bulk and you can spray over large areas. Now highly recommended by some is industrial vinegar, and this isn't too expensive, widely available, not too toxic. But I think I'm looking for something a bit stronger, so I bought this 40% phosphoric acid. Not very expensive. I paid only just over £20 from Amazon. However, it's really nasty stuff. Don't get this anywhere on your body, particularly not in the eyes, and don't even think about drinking it. Last but not least, we have good old-fashioned rough cider. Someone told me this will remove rust from anything. However, as far as I'm concerned, it's far too good to waste. And I prefer to drink it. So let's do our little experiment with a rusty old hinge. I'll start with the Rustbuster rust converter. On she goes. Wash out the brush. Next, the industrial vinegar. Put it on good and thick. And finally the 40% phosphoric acid. And look how well covered up I am with good strong gloves. So that's it, and we'll have a look tomorrow to see what happened. So what's the result of my little experiment? Well, we've got the three areas here. Area treated with vinegar, with phosphoric acid, and with a rust converter. Taking the vinegar area first, I'm a little bit disappointed. It's not too much different to the untreated area here. The surface is still a little bit friable, maybe a tiny bit stabilised, but not very much. I've reason to believe if I'd left it soaking in vinegar overnight, this might have come up bright and shiny. And out of interest, I will do a little experiment tonight. However, this isn't applicable to the bodywork of a vehicle. You can only do this with small parts, of course. The phosphoric acid area. Now, phosphoric acid is widely used as a pickling agent in industry, and I can see why. This area is more stable, the friable material is gone, and I can see that it's ideal for priming over. So it seems to have done its job. And finally, the area treated with a rust converter. Well, this has a shiny black finish. I believe that this is the equivalent of a normal primer, and so we can immediately apply other surface coatings on top of this. So what have I concluded? Well, firstly, on the exposed surfaces, I'd strongly recommend the use of a rust converter like this. It does a good job, provides a nice stable surface you can coat over, and I've already used quite a bit of this under the Discovery. But my biggest problem are the enclosed spaces, and in particular the two longitudinal chassis rails. I have washed them out with a hose pipe, got out quite a bit of mud and other loose rubbish, but it's still full of active rust, and I don't feel confident in applying something like Waxol over the top of the active rust. I want to deactivate it first. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to inject these members with the phosphoric acid, leave it for 24 hours, and then wash it out again with water. And this is going to have two benefits. Firstly, it will stabilise the surface, make it less friable, better able to accept subsequent surface coatings, but also it has a passivating effect. Where it reacts with the rust, it will leave iron phosphate, which is both a stable and an insoluble surface, so it does have the effect of passivating the rust. Needless to say, I will have to take suitable safety precautions because this isn't nice stuff at all. So what happened? Well, I duly went ahead and injected the chassis members. I used this Waxol gun, and this gives very good coverage. Spray goes absolutely everywhere. I'm afraid to say I couldn't film it. There was phosphoric acid mist in the air, and I didn't want my camera anywhere in the vicinity. I can't even film the end result inside the chassis members. I've got no way of doing that. However, I have painted it on a number of heavily corroded items, and I can see the beneficial effect. I think it's the best job I can do in preparing the chassis members and passivating the active rust. A note on safety. It isn't a nice operation. Phosphoric acid gets absolutely everywhere, reacts with anything it touches. The concrete was bubbling up. My pit has now had a good pickling. I wouldn't recommend to anyone else to do what I did. On the other hand, if you are foolhardy enough to go ahead, I think you'll find that it's the best possible preparation for the enclosed spaces. And last but not least, what about the old vinegar? Well, I left the end of this rusty hinge soaking in some vinegar, and after 24 hours or so, had a good effect. It's removed the active rust, it's left a nice pickle surface, and I would recommend it as treatment for small parts. So what next? Well, obviously I've got a big welding job to do, and there's a story behind that, and then finally I'll be able to talk about the surface coatings which go on at the end of the day. So it's Bill the Engineer signing off, and I'll see you shortly in the last two videos in this series. Bye bye.